Okay, so what if I told you that the Bible you grew up with, well, it might be missing a few books. And not because of some wild new discovery, but because there's a version that's been hiding in plain sight for, just about 1,600 years. One that wasn't shaped by a king's agenda, but by a much older tradition. Yeah, let's get into it.
I mean, it seems like a simple question, right? But the answer can totally reframe everything we think we know about the very foundations of Christianity. It makes you stop and ask, wait a minute, where did the book I'm reading actually come from?
And boom, this slide just lays it all out there. On one side, you've got the standard Western Protestant Bible, 66 books. We know that one. But on the other side, the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible with 81. And no, that is not a typo. That's a 15-book difference. That's like a whole extra library of ancient texts that one tradition kept and another one, well, set aside. So what is going on here?
All right, to really get our heads around this, we need to get to know this other Bible. And it's not just a different book, you know? It's more like a theological time capsule.
Now listen to that phrase carefully. The oldest, complete biblical tradition still in continuous use. That's super specific, right? We're not talking about the oldest scrap of paper ever found. We're talking about something that's arguably way more important, a living, breathing tradition. One that people have been reading, praying with, and practicing without a break for centuries.
You know, a lot of the confusion just comes down to what we even mean by the word Bible. Is it the oldest manuscript fragment we've dug up, the first time someone tried to bind everything into one book? Or are we talking about the oldest, most stable list of books, a canon that a community has actually consistently used as their scripture? And yeah, it's in that category where the Ethiopian tradition really stands out.
This table really makes it clear. You can see that while other major Christian traditions had their collections of scripture change over time, books debated, added, removed, the Ethiopian canon was basically locked in super early. We're talking 4th or 5th century, and it has stayed that way. It wasn't lost and then found again. No, this was intentionally guarded. Which leads to the big question, right? If this ancient version exists, why don't more of us know about it? Well, to answer that, we've got to talk about an emperor.
Okay, so this is it. This is the big fork in the road in history. It's the moment when this small, scrappy faith collides head-on with imperial power. And the consequences of that crash, well, they ended up shaping the Bible that landed in your hands today.
So picture this. It's the early 4th century. The Roman Emperor Constantine is looking at his massive, sprawling, and honestly, kind of fragmenting empire. He sees this growing Christian faith not just as a religion, but as a potential tool. So what does he do? Step 1. He legalizes it with the Edict of Milan. Step 2, at the Council of Nicaea, he pushes hard to standardize its beliefs. And step 3, his successors make it the official state religion. Think about that. In less than 100 years, Christianity went from a persecuted movement to the literal glue holding the Roman Empire together.
And we have to be really clear about this. Constantine's main goal was not theological purity, it was political stability. For an emperor trying to hold things together, a diverse, decentralized faith with all these competing texts and ideas, that's not a feature, it's a bug, it's a liability. He needed one brand, one message, one authorized version of the book that could be enforced from Rome all the way to Jerusalem.
And this quote just nails it. Once an empire backs a belief system, that system stops being just a faith. It becomes infrastructure. I mean, let that sink in. The faith that started with a man crucified by the empire was now being used by the empire. It wasn't just a belief anymore, it was infrastructure, something to be managed, regulated, and distributed, just like roads and aqueducts. And any text that didn't quite fit that new, streamlined imperial model, well, they just got pushed to the side.
Okay, so let's look at some real-world examples of this split. Because the differences aren't just in the table of contents. They show up in the very first stories we all learn, like the creation of the world. Probably the easiest way to think about it is like this. The King James Version gives you the concise blueprint for creation. It sticks almost entirely to Genesis. But the Ethiopian tradition? It gives you that same blueprint, but it also includes the ancient commentary. We're talking books like 1st Enoch and Jubilees, which, by the way, were super popular and widely read by Jews and early Christians before Constantine decided to standardize everything.
Yeah, we all know this one, right? The clean, tidy 6-day sequence from Genesis 1. God speaks, and boom, it happens. It's powerful, it's majestic, and it's really focused on God's absolute authority over the physical world.
But now, check out the extra layers the Ethiopian tradition throws in.
And notice, it doesn't contradict Genesis at all, it just expands on it. In this view, creation isn't just physical, it's also organizational. You have angels being created and given specific jobs, the heavenly realms get a whole org chart. Even the calendar is laid out as a sacred part of creation's order. And this makes the fall of humanity a much bigger deal. It's not just some earthly mess-up, it's a full-blown disruption of the entire cosmic heavenly order.
So you see, these two traditions didn't just end up with different books by accident. They were preserved under totally different circumstances, and those circumstances had massive implications for the cultural frameworks that got baked right into them.
And this comparison just lays it bare. The King James Version? It was first and foremost a project of state governance. King James I literally commissioned it to unify his kingdom and squash any margin notes that questioned his divine right to rule. The Ethiopian Bible, though? Totally different story. It was a project of monastic preservation, copied by hand, over centuries, in communities that were pretty much off the grid, insulated from all the political drama blowing up in Europe. And this, right here, really gets to the core of it. Most Christians in the West don't follow the Bible they do because they made a conscious choice. Nope, they inherited it. It's an inheritance passed down through centuries of Roman influence. It's the default setting, you know? And it's the default simply because, historically speaking, Constantine's side won.
But let's be really honest here. Neither tradition gets a free pass on this next point. Both were formed in deeply, deeply patriarchal cultures, and their texts absolutely reflect that. I mean, across both collections, you see men holding the formal authority, genealogies that are all about the men, and women's roles being tightly regulated. It's a huge reminder that the Bible doesn't just float above history, it speaks from right inside of it. And that means it contains both the limitations of its time and, as we're about to see, some pretty radical challenges to those very same limitations.
All right, so after all of this, an ancient Bible we never knew, an emperor's big edit, different creation stories, it all boils down to one really personal question, doesn't it? What does any of this mean for you or me, just trying to follow the teachings of Jesus today? This is the question, right? This is the one that cuts through all the history, all the theology. If one Bible was edited by an empire and the other one preserves some older texts, which one is the right one? Which one should I be reading? And the answer, maybe, is to shift the question itself. It's not about finding the one perfect book. It's about having the right approach. So, step one, start with the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the non-negotiables, the bedrock. Step two, let Jesus be your lens. If you read something in any other part of the Scripture that seems to contradict the character of Jesus you see in the Gospels, Jesus gets priority. And step three, be curious. Don't be dogmatic. Reading other ancient texts, like 1 Enoch from the Ethiopian canon, doesn't make you a heretic. It makes you a more informed reader. It helps you understand the world that Jesus actually lived in.
And you know, it's really helpful to remember this one thing. The earliest followers of Jesus didn't even call themselves Christians. That was a name other people gave them, kind of as an insult. What did they call themselves? They called their movement the Way. Think about that. Not a religion, not an institution, but a way, a path to be walked, a practice, a way of life.
And in the end, maybe that's the real takeaway from all of this. The ultimate goal isn't to have the correct table of contents or to win a historical argument. The point isn't even the book itself. The point is the path. The point is walking the way Jesus walked. And that's a challenge that goes way beyond any single tradition or any single book.